Welcome to the overview of the Doctor of Psychology program in Clinical Psychology at Divine Mercy University. My name is Bradley Seifer, and I'm the PsyD admissions advisor at DMU. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to go through this overview with you. If you have a question, go ahead and lodge your question in the chat box, and then we can sort of go from there. So just go ahead and put your questions in the chat box, and then I'll go ahead and answer them as we go through this. All right. So this is the overview of the Doctor of Psychology and Clinical Psychology at Divine Mercy University. And that's me, Bradley. All right, so Divine Mercy is a Catholic institution comprised of two schools. It's dedicated to the scientific study of psychology with a Catholic Christian understanding of the person, marriage, and family. It was founded in 1999 as the Institute for the Psychological Sciences. And in 2014, the Institute launched its Master of Science in Psychology program online with its focus on educating working professionals. And in 2015, IPS was renamed Divine Mercy University, that's DMU, with the addition of the School of Counseling. So Divine Mercy is comprised of two schools. There's the School of Counseling, which is primarily an online program. It does have a hybrid component. And also IPS, the Institute of the Psychological Sciences, which has both the doctoral program, which is residential, and the master's, which is online, exclusively online. So this is sort of a pictorial representation of what was just mentioned about the nature of the university. All right, so our mission at Divine Mercy is to provide students with an effective academic and educational environment that supports the integration of the psychological sciences and a Catholic Christian understanding of the person, and prepare students to respond to their vocation as mental health professionals. We are located in Northern Virginia, specifically Sterling, Virginia. We are sort of in between the Blue Ridge Mountains to our very west, Virginia bordering on West Virginia, and our nation's capital to the far east. Washington, D.C. has many, many artistic and cultural opportunities available for those that are interested in those things. And for those that are more inclined toward outdoor activities, there's the west. We have hiking and kayaking and whitewater rafting. We have vineyards and people that enjoy any number of sundry outdoor activities. The west part of the state of Virginia is beautiful. We're moving into our fall season, so we're starting to see lots of beautiful. We're about to go into the foliage of fall. So lots of great things to do. Basically, something here for everybody. Okay, so this is a bit about accreditation. So as you can see, Divine Mercy University is thoroughly accredited. So we are accredited by SACS, the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. And SACS is recognized as an accrediting agency of colleges and schools by the Department of Education. And Divine Mercy has voluntarily participated in the accrediting process and met or exceeded all standards and thorough evaluation. Moreover, we're approved to operate by SCHEV, the State Council of Higher Education in Virginia. The PsyD program has been recognized since 2006 as a National Registered Designation Program by the Association of State and Provisional Psychology Boards. And perhaps most notably of all is that the PsyD program has been accredited by the American Psychological Association, the APA, since 2016. Divine Mercy has also been approved to participate in the National Council for State Authorization Reciprocity Agreements. So as you can see, we're thoroughly and utterly accredited by numbering a number of accrediting agencies. Okay. So what exactly is clinical psychology? Clinical psychology is a psychological specialty that provides continuing and comprehensive mental and behavioral health care for individuals and families, consultation to agencies and communities, training, education, and supervision, and research-based practice. So that's sort of a very pithy definition of clinical psychology. All right, so let's talk a bit about our program structure and clinical experience. So there are in total 122 hours in our PsyD program. And now that includes a master's in psychology. So for those of you that don't have master's degrees, that's totally fine. A master's is not required. In fact, you are granted a master's after a completion of 60 credit hours which happens within the first 2 years of the program. So after the first 2 years, you go on for another 3, and after the third, there is completion of the doctorate. And the doctorate of psychology prepares ultimately for licensure as a clinical psychologist. So in year 1, that's when you start your dissertation research, and your courses begin in year 1, okay? And then in year 2, your coursework continues. But in year 2, unlike year 1, you'll start to see patients, you'll start to see clients in our on-campus clinic. We have a clinic here at Divine Mercy that's designed for our doctoral students to see patients really for their first time in year 2. And then in year 3, years 3 and 4, coursework does continue. However, what happens in years 3 and 4 is you'll start to have less coursework, and you'll start to have more clinical hours. So it resembles medical school in that way, front loaded. There's more classes. The most classes you'll have is in years 1 and 2, and then in years 3 and 4, you'll have fewer classes, but the clinical hours will be increased. You'll see more patients more frequently. And then in year 5, that's when you go off campus to your pre-doctoral internship. And that is any number of APA accredited sites. As you can see here, these are just a few. So St. Elizabeth's in Washington, D.C., the Psychiatric Hospital of Washington, and the Virginia Medical Center in Martinsburg, Virginia. And as you can see down here, we have 100% placement into APA accredited sites off campus. So our students do very well, finding places in the 5th year. All right, so is the PsyD program right for you? These are sort of some questions that you might want to consider sort of as you discern the process of whether or not the PsyD program is for you. So do you want to help people flourish? Are you interested in the science behind human behavior? Do you want to become an instrument of healing through the psychological sciences? Are you interested in performing psychological tests and assessments to diagnose your clients and create treatment plans? Are you looking to start a career as a licensed mental health professional, and specifically as a clinical psychologist? So just some things to think about in terms of where you want to be with your career. All right, so these are the key areas of competency that we aim to achieve in the PsyD program here at Divine Mercy. So foundations in psychological sciences and research, integrity in practice, assessment and diagnosis, therapeutic intervention, professional roles, clinical practice from a Catholic integrative perspective. Now, you may notice these first 5 are common throughout, most PsyD programs will have these 5, but this last one, the integrative element, is really what is really sort of salient and unique about Divine Mercy, is that it kind of integrates and brings together our program under the ordering of our Catholic faith. Okay, so I'm going to take each of these in turn and go ahead and sort of, as I go through, try to, if you have any questions, again, any questions go in the chat box, and we'll revisit any questions at the end of the presentation. So first, foundations in psychological sciences and research. Graduates will attain foundational psychological science knowledge of biological, cognitive, affective, social, and developmental aspects of the human person, as well as history and systems of psychology, psychological measurement, research design, and statistical method. Graduates will have the skills necessary to conduct their own psychological research. Second, integrity in practice. Graduates will be knowledgeable in the area of diversity and ethics and display critical thinking, self-aware and reflective practice, and self-care. Graduates will demonstrate responsiveness to supervision, collegiality, and professional comportment in professional practice. All right, so these are key areas of competency achieved through the PsyD program. 3, assessment and diagnosis. Graduates will be able to conduct clinical interviewing, perform intake evaluation, demonstrate knowledge in the administration, scoring, and interpretation of psychological assessment, integrate multiple sources of test data and clinical interview information into a written report, diagnose and develop a treatment plan. 4, therapeutic intervention. Graduates will be able to demonstrate case conceptualization, treatment planning, building and maintaining the therapeutic relationship, psychotherapy skills, crisis management of urgent and special circumstances, and discharge planning. 5, professional roles. Graduates will be able to function in a variety of required roles of professional psychologists, so include consultant, educator, supervisor, practice manager, and program evaluator. They'll be able to work collaboratively within interdisciplinary teams and with clients. 6, clinical practice from a Catholic integrative perspective. Graduates will have developed a Catholic understanding of human flourishing in the individual person in marriage and family life, and the ability to integrate this with the psychological sciences in clinical practice. Okay. Now, this is a non-exhaustive sampling of employment tracks that are absolutely possible for a clinical psychologist. So obviously the first one, licensed clinical psychologist, but also things like a clinic director, a psychiatric technician, a psychiatric crisis unit interviewer, community mental health social worker, drug abuse social worker, and drug and alcohol specialist, a certified alcohol and drug counselor and therapist, professional psychological resource advisor, psychological behavioral therapist, and the list sort of goes on and on. So again, this is a non-exhaustive list. There are any multitude of things you could do with a doctoral degree in psychology. And so I would encourage each of you to sort of consider as you discern this process of applying to Divine Mercy and what your particular area within psychology may be. Is it more, are you interested in being in a hospital or being in an outpatient clinic, having your own practice with other mental health professionals, such as social workers, counselors, other psychologists? Would you rather be in a hospital, say, in working more with medical doctors and psychiatrists and nurses? So there's a really, truly, it's a wonderful profession. There's a plethora of fascinating things that you could do with a doctoral degree in psychology. These are just a handful of student testimonials. So these are happy alumni that have said some really good things about us. So for example, James Walovich said, in our clinical psychology program, the training is focused on healing the whole person. And Kristen Long, I was drawn to the PsyD program out of a desire to serve others in a more profound way than my previous positions offered. Timothy White, he says, this school is not afraid to teach you what it means to be human at every level, psychologically, philosophically, and theologically, and that's why I like it. And then Kirsten Curtis has said, I'm so thankful for DMU. The faculty members are very supportive and receive lots of hands-on clinical experience. Okay, this is a brief testimonial from one of our alumni. William Johnston has done some research into PTSD, and so we're going to go ahead and give this a watch.
Hi, my name is William Johnston, and I'm a PsyD student at Divine Mercy University, currently approaching the end of my third year in the program. Military service runs in my family, and so both my grandparents served, my parents both served. This door, the PsyD program at Divine Mercy University, opened that opportunity for me to continue to give back, to conduct research, and hopefully implement a more robust program to treat PTSD as it relates to combat veterans. DMU has certainly provided the integration that I've sought in terms of my formation, both the philosophy and theology core, in addition to the psychology curriculum, has provided me growth in terms of my faith and my role as a husband and father, and of course a psychological clinician. So in essence, the Catholic Christian meta model of the human person is why I'm here, both for my own sake as well as the sake of my future clients.
All right, and moving on to our next one is also a testimonial from another happy alumna, actually.
I would say that being a student at Divine Mercy University, or DMU, is one of the best things that happens to me. I really appreciate a great support from faculty members and also classmates. I have gained a great deal of knowledge in all aspects of clinical practice, research, and also professional development. DMU not only provides students with strong academic skills, but also prepares them for a career in psychology. I personally benefit from mentorship with academic advisor and clinical supervisors. As a person, what I most appreciate from DMU is that its mission helped broaden my perspectives in understanding a human person through the lens of Catholicism. Catholic principles, especially in hope, love, and faith, are very valuable and certainly helped me become a better clinician.
Okay, very good. So moving on, so this slide is about our faculty, which are quite distinguished. We have, I would say, really the strongest part of our school is our faculty, which is really the beating heart of our school. And this is just a small selection of many, there are many. So the top left-hand corner is Dr. Lisa Klowicki, who is our program director, and she specializes in adult and adolescent and couples therapy. To her right is Dr. Diane Graves, who is the assistant program director. She's a specialist in developmental and child psychology. And to her right, Dr. Anna Pecoraro is a specialist in addiction and trauma treatment. And the bottom three gentlemen here are among the founding faculty members here at Divine Mercy. The bottom left is Dr. Philip Strafani, and his specialist is in CBT therapy and group therapy. To his right is Dr. Bill Nordling, and he specializes in child, marriage, and family. Excuse me. And to his right is Dr. Paul Vitz, who is our senior scholar, and his focus is on the integration between Catholic theology and psychology. So you may be familiar with some of their work. Dr. Vitz's work is rather prominent, especially his recent books on the role of the Father, and how we understand God through sort of our human fathers as a mediator between God and man. So all of them are wonderful scholars and clinicians in their own right. Most of them have, either have practices themselves or have done clinical work. So they're both excellent scholars and clinicians, which they bring to the classroom. Okay, so this is a bit about licensing. So is a license required? A license to practice is required by each state or jurisdiction where individuals might practice as a counselor. Licensing begins after the student completes the practicum and internship and officially graduates from Divine Mercy. States can often have additional and differing requirements. Students are responsible for checking state requirements where they plan to work and educate them. And these typically include national and state exams. Divine Mercy will provide general information related to licensure during the student experience. Now, who initiates licensing? Licensing is a student-driven process. It's important for the student to begin research of licensing requirements in the state he or she intends to work in as early in the program as possible. Now, will students be fully licensed after graduation? No, students must work about a year in a supervised clinical environment in addition to other state requirements to be licensed. The graduate may be required to obtain a provisional license for this year period. So be sure to check your state for individual requirements. So basically, getting a doctoral degree in psychology doesn't necessarily, it doesn't give you licensure, that's to say. So you have the degree, but the degree is to prepare you for ultimately to take your licensure exams to be fully licensed as a clinical psychologist in whatever state that you happen to want to practice in. Okay. This is a chart depicting the distinction between a material investment like a car, and more, you might say, a more spiritual investment like education. So on the one hand, when you're investing in something like a car, it's like, okay, so you buy the car and shortly thereafter, the investment rapidly depreciates. So, a few years after you buy this car, it's worth much, much less. Whereas investing in education, in your soul, in your mind, especially within psychology, this investment is going to do just the opposite. It's going to appreciate, it's going to grow, it's going to augment with time. So as you become sort of embroiled within psychology and you take on a certain expertise, your value to the profession is just going to grow as you become more and more mature in your years as a psychologist. As your experience grows, so does your value to this profession. So this is ultimately, it's really an investment that pays throughout a lifetime, or you're really investing in not just 5 years of your life, but potentially for the rest of your career, right? So this is a truly a high value sort of investment that you're really making in yourself that sort of appreciates with time. Which brings us to kind of like the next slide here, which is precisely the investment part of it. How much does it cost? So it is $1,095 per credit at 122 credits, which is $133,590, and this does not include fees or indirect expenses. And there are many different avenues by which students have funded their education. These are a few of the common ones. So we have, federal aid, William D. Ford, federal direct student loan program, subsidized and unsubsidized loans, grants from the government. So the main thing here is that once you submit your application, our financial aid department will be in touch with you very quickly thereafter to sort of begin the process of, how do you most prudently pay for your education. Also noteworthy is our assistantships on campus, or a work-study program. So if this is of interest to you, we have several students here at DMU who work in various offices on campus. For example, we have some students who work with us in admissions, others in the business office. And so this is often a great way to defray some of the costs of your education. It's typically a 10 to 20 hour a week kind of gig. So definitely part-time, because this is really a very rigorous program. So it's like I said before, it's a worthwhile investment, but it's also a rigorous, and it demands a lot of you. And so having a full-time job can complicate things. These are some other alternative financing options. One that is especially noteworthy are things like diocesan investments. A lot of times you can establish an MOU with a diocese and say, hey, here I am. I'm about to embark on a PsyD at Divine Mercy University. How about you pay for part of my educational expenses, and then I'll come to work for you for a few years after graduation. And psychologists are so really in demand. The church needs good psychologists. And anything from working for things like, a diocesan seminarians need to be tested. They need to go through psychological tests, or to work for Catholic charities, things like this, working with the poor. The church is really often in need of excellent Catholic, or at least Catholic formed therapists that Divine Mercy offers. All right, this is a bit about more about the scholarship sides of things. So as you can see, there are several different scholarships to which you could apply. Now, you can apply to up to 4 of these and receive up to 2 of them. Now, also of interest is this particular one, the 50% off scholarship, which are for students. If you have high GPA, students are eligible for the 50% off scholarship. And for anyone who applies prior to October 14th and gets their online application in, is awarded a $3,000 scholarship off of the first year of tuition. So that's a good incentive, for all of you that are thinking about applying to Divine Mercy. You do, if you get your application in before October 15th and you're accepted, you get $3,000 off your first year's tuition. So definitely want to take advantage of that. Okay, this is a bit about entrance requirements. So we do require a bachelor's degree from a regionally accredited or internationally recognized school. Now, we also additionally prefer that you have studied psychology. However, students without, we take many people that don't have psychology backgrounds. So if you study philosophy or physics or chemistry or really any undergraduate degree that wasn't psychology, and you have no psychology background at all, we do require those students to take a prerequisite class that's taken concurrently with the other classes. This is typically an online class, so it's not overburdening for our students without psychology backgrounds, but it does give you a good kind of overview of the psychological science so that keep you to bring you up to speed nice and quickly. And then we do have a minimum GPA of a 3.0 on a 4.0 scale. And if you don't have a 3.0, for those that have less than that, are considered on a case-by-case basis, but in no way can admission be guaranteed. So these are sort of our general, you might say, bare minimum requirements for application. Okay, so this is a bit about the process by which it unfolds. So the first thing to do is to go ahead and submit your online application, and that can be done absolutely online. And then as soon as you apply, our financial aid office will be in touch with you to sort of work through the process of how to best fund your education. And then we do try to do our best to maintain consistent communication. And then once all documents are submitted, competitive applicants are invited to interview on site. We have 3 different interviews, one in November, one in January, and one in March. So, but it's definitely smart to get your application in sooner rather than later to secure those early interview spots. And then ultimately, all applicants will hear back by admission decisions by mid-February, and then the program begins August of 23. Okay, so this is just sort of like a rundown of the application process itself. So there's 2 parts. The first is the online application that I mentioned before, and that's something that you can do completely online. It's quite simple, just a matter of completing some personal information and who you're getting references from, and which brings me to this point. So we do require 3 letters of recommendation, 2 of which must be academic in nature. So here it's best to draw from professors that you've had either in graduate school or in your college years. And then one of them should be sort of more professional in nature. So maybe perhaps a supervisor at work, that can recommend you, that can speak to your strengths as, in the workforce and how you've worked hard and these sorts of things. And then the official transcripts from all the post-secondary institutions. So basically college and forward college and graduate school. And then the official GRE test scores should be sent to this code here, which is the DMU code. And these should be fairly recent. So within the past 5 years, if you have not yet taken the GRE, and you're serious about applying, I would very much encourage you to register for the GRE and go ahead and take it. Because the thing to note about the GRE, this often comes up in questions that people have is, how serious do we take the GRE? And so the GRE is required, but it's not as if we have a threshold or a minimum or maximum, a minimum score really that beyond, if you don't attain that score, you're not eligible for admission. That's not the case. So the GRE is a piece of the puzzle, but it's a piece among many other elements of the application. So things that are much more important would be, your transcripts, your letters of recommendation, your essays that you write on your own behalf. What in your recommendations, what do your professors and your supervisors say about you? And then maybe most importantly is how you actually do in the interview itself. So once you come to campus, how do you conduct yourself? Are you professional or are you slovenly? Are you respectful or are you condescending? So these kinds of you might call them, soft skills, are really, important because ultimately, you're going to, many of you will become clinical psychologists and you'll be working with people. So learning how to conduct yourself professionally in these kinds of situations is quite important. Other things to consider, how well do you field questions? How well do you respond to sophisticated situations? Are your answers overly simplistic, or are they duly complex? These kinds of things are much more impactful and meaningful and important in the application than simply the GRE. Now, but how on the other side of the GRE isn't really nothing either. So, if you have, let's say, low GPA and you want to show that you really have the intellectual kind of fiber to make it through a graduate program, having a higher GRE score could definitely be advantageous. But in no way would the GRE, in any way guarantee a high GRE score guarantee admission, if that makes sense. So that's sort of like basic comments about the GRE and the role that it plays in our admissions process. Okay. So this is information for international applicants. So if you're an international applicant, this would be important to know. So for international applicants whose baccalaureate degree was earned at an institution outside the United States, you should be aware of these things. So applicants holding degrees from outside the US must submit an international transcript to NACIS approval evaluation services such as WES. So go ahead and submit your transcript to WES for a course-by-course evaluation of their transcript. So sort of, what does this transcript mean in American terms, right? And then applicants holding degrees from outside the US must demonstrate post-secondary education that is at a minimum equivalent to United States bachelor's degree. And if the credential is not in English, the credential must be translated into English. And then the cost for this evaluation will be the responsibility of the student. And applicants whose primary language is not English may also be required to take a TOEFL test, just to make sure that your English is sufficient. So, all right, with that, I conclude, and I will move this over to questions. Okay, so somebody asked about what psychology prereqs do you want to see? So that was sort of what I was getting at with this business of studying psychology. It's helpful, but it's absolutely not necessary. But if you are sort of in college or you're able to take psychology classes, I absolutely recommend that. Things like introductory psychology, Psych 101, it'd be a good thing to take. Also things like abnormal psychology, things like social psychology. What else? Some of the basic sort of core nuts and bolts, meat and potatoes kind of psychology courses would be advantageous to take, or if, once you get beyond that, maybe going into personality psychology, things like that. Let's see what else we have here. Okay, somebody asked about if one were to stop their studies after a master's degree. This is a really interesting question, and they're asking, how does this differ from getting a counseling degree? And the answer is this: counseling, similar to clinical psychology, is a clinical program. Okay, and what that means is counselors are clinicians. So they see patients, they use psychotherapy to heal, but counselors, like clinical psychologists, have to become licensed to become counselors, okay? But getting a master's degree in psychology, either if you were to stop after having received a master's in psychology going through the doctorate here, or if you were to go to our own program, we have a master's online in psychology. Both of those things are, well, I should say, especially the master's that's online, that's a non-clinical kind of situation. So that doesn't prepare you for, licensure as a psychologist or as a counselor. And the same would be the case with someone that just finished a master's of psychology. It'd be similar to that. You would not be able to become a clinical psychologist, because at least in the United States, as it stands now, clinical psychologists must have doctoral degrees. So that's just sort of a stricture of American education. There are some other questions that I want to get to that are quite common, that even though you guys haven't asked about, I want to kind of get to just in case people are wondering. A lot of times people will ask about the distinction between a PhD on the one hand and a PsyD on the other. And the difference is this: the PsyD has a much stronger clinical emphasis. So there's many more, PsyD students will spend a lot of time in the clinic, like I mentioned. So we front load the coursework in the beginning, and then toward the end, there's much more clinical hours. Whereas the doctorate the PhD, the Doctor of Philosophy, has a stronger research component to it. So if you want to do psychological research, if you want to focus on experiments, if you want to be on the sort of like the vanguard of research within psychology, a PhD may in fact be your better option. But if you want to do clinical work, if you want to work with people, if you want to be a healer, if you want to, maybe have your own clinic, these kinds of things, definitely the PsyD is the thing for you. And so that's more our focus. Now, that's not to say that, were you to go into the PsyD here that you wouldn't have any research background. That's not the case, because we require our students to do a doctoral dissertation, which requires original research in the field of psychology. And so you're trained in research. So really the goal within a PsyD is to be able to digest the sort of like the cutting edge research. And it's less about actually conducting the research itself, though you may end up doing that kind of thing for your dissertation. But the goal really of our program is to produce clinicians, healers for those with mental disorders and these kinds of things. Some other things to consider that are also sort of frequently asked questions is our program a specialist program? Can you specialize in something specific within psychology, like, say you're really interested in forensics, the interplay between psychology and the law, for example. And really, it's interesting. Divine Mercy's greatest strength, I mentioned before, really the greatest strength is our faculty, which it is. But what our faculty do is provide a generalist program that allows for really anyone with an interest in any field within psychology, an opportunity to learn. Okay, so if you did have like a specific interest in working, say, in corrections and in forensic psychology, we could absolutely accommodate that. We've had alumni going into any number of different areas within psychology. So while we're not a specialist program, so we don't specialize in, say, social psychology or forensics, or for example, if you had a program that was specified to something like some sort of psychotherapy. So let's say that you really wanted to focus in on say CBT therapy. Now, surely you're going to learn CBT here at Divine Mercy, but you're also going to learn lots of other different type of psychotherapies, such as IFS or emotional-based therapy, psychodynamic therapies. So there's lots of different, you'll be exposed to basically not just every academic area within psychology at Divine Mercy, you're also going to be exposed to really sort of like the best different psychotherapy schools. And so what this allows you to do as a clinician is to be able to meet any number of different clients that have very variegated issues, such that maybe they might respond better to CBT, or another person might respond better to IFS. So this is really, we're a generalist program that allows people to kind of like find research interests, or kind of like cinch down into one part of psychology that they find especially alluring and attractive. So that's sort of really Divine Mercy in a nutshell in terms of our academic program. Sometimes people ask about the workload at Divine Mercy. And like I said before, this is a rigorous doctoral program. And so, that's why, we really discourage students from working full time, and that, we really want you to be devoted to this. It's really a all year round for 5 years, you're going to be giving yourself to this. And so really coursework will range depending on the semester between 12 and 18 credits. So it's absolutely full-time commitment that even goes through the summer months in most cases. So, and this includes both, classroom work, but also your clinical work. So it's truly a robust program to make you into really the best clinical psychologist that you can be. Sometimes people ask about student housing. And while we do not provide on-campus housing for our students, a lot of our students are able to find reasonably affordable housing in the local area, in the Sterling area. Some students live in Ashby. So a lot of times what students will do is they'll live together, and it can drive the cost of rent down. So that's a really good idea. Our students have been, incredibly frugal and smart with finding each other and finding ways to make housing reasonably priced, especially given the cost of the program in general. Sometimes people ask about the cafeteria, like, is there a cafeteria on campus? Well, we don't exactly have a cafeteria per se, but we have a common area with a vending machine. A lot of times students will come together and have, share their lunches together and, talk and that kind of thing. So we don't offer, it's not like a traditional university in the sense that we offer, you food when you come here, but we try to provide an ambiance of collaboration and mutual support. All right, I think that will do for now. For those of you that want more information, go ahead and if you check out the chat, I've listed my Calendly link, my email. I've indicated links to the alumna and the alumnus testimonials, and other distinguished alumni testimonials, and also the prior webinar with Matthew Wen, who is a current third-year PsyD student here at Divine Mercy. I highly encourage you to check out that prior webinar because Matthew is a wonderful student, and he's full of insight into so many elements of the doctoral program. As a student that I'm sort of, as a missions advisor, I'm sort of a little bit removed from that. So I highly encourage you to check that out. And so please get in touch with me. I look forward to hearing from you. And with that, I conclude. God bless you. Bye-bye.